in different industries. Woodring is, as I say, the founder of Ocean Recovery Alliance, a non-profit organization focused on bringing innovative solutions and technology and collaborations to really impact positive improvements for the health of the ocean, something that a number of YGLs are very focused on. We have the Best Oceans initiative. We have many other YGLs who've been involved in different levels of trying to protect our marine habitat. Two main projects of the group were announced at the Clinton Global Initiative in 2010 that Doug launched and managed, the Global Platform and the Plastic Disclosure Project, both of which are incorporated into some of the programs that the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, and the World Bank's Global Partnership have been managing and promoting, and that are very much at the forefront of the whole battle to manage and protect our oceans at a global level. He's an advisor to the Economist's Ocean Summit, and in 2012 co-authored the UNEP's yearbook chapter on the danger of plastic in the ocean. He's the founder of the Plasticity Forum, and he has a glittering background across Wharton, Johns Hopkins, SAIS, and Berkeley, and was nominated 3 times for the Global Open Water Swimmer of the Year. Tim Reynolds, who I know is going to then take over, is a senior research analyst at Trucost. Trucost has been collecting data on the environmental impacts, and for one of the what I think is one of the organizations I believe has one of the most robust messages out there in terms of trying to understand the economic value that's driven by intangibles, that's driven by the natural environment for our global economy, and has been involved in many of the most important exercises that Trucost has done, most recently with Pure, which many of you will have seen, in one of the defined engagements about to map and new environmental contributions of businesses. So we have a fantastic speaker group set up, quite going to manage that and run us through the next hour. And with that, let me pass over to Doug and say, Doug, and also Julie, many thanks indeed for joining us. We really appreciate it as a group of YGLs, and we look forward to hearing your insights.
And can everyone hear? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, Doug, over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you for the introduction, and you're correct in about our quest for the ocean health here, but really what us together is your circular economy, because at the beginning, as opposed to the end of the day, ocean is the end of the day, but the beginning is what we all do on land with our companies and our communities, and that's really where the problem starts, and that's also where it can be resolved, and that's where there's a lot of opportunities when you start looking at the circular economy. So we use ocean as the driver, but in reality, the Plastic Disclosure Project, it's really a topic that hits almost every single industry, because plastic is a pretty good price when you think about all of its different benefits and uses. And related to climate change, it's something that many companies have used for lightweighting, energy reduction. But unfortunately, one of the problems is that as we put them down, we've increased a problem, which is the high use of plastic and a lot of infrastructure to handle it when the first initial use of that product is finished. What we're going to talk about today, and we'll talk about this new report that we've done with Trucost, which really is, I think, a groundbreaking report on the natural cost of happens with plastic if we're not managing it correctly, and hopefully that this whole thinking can really push the impetus for using and driving the circular economy discussion much faster. No one exactly knows how much is in the ocean, but UN estimates roughly 11 billion pounds, or 10 million to 15 million tons. That is not is hard to track, but the point is that many economies around the world do not have the appropriate infrastructure to handle recycling or waste management. And what is getting into the water today comes from land, as I just mentioned. Comes from throughout streams and rivers. For most countries, many countries, the river is actually one of the waste management resource tools, unfortunately, and that has a direct impact on water quality, fishing, health of the people, and obviously downstream gets in the ocean. So if we can pinch that at the at outflows and really focus on the material as a resource on our areas, then we can solve the problem of what's getting into the ocean at the same time. To put perspective, today we globally make about 2 billion tons of municipal solid waste, and tons visually would mean in Japan and 10 meters of waste every year. The World Bank estimates, some people say by 2025, which is not far away, due to population growth and consumption, this number could almost double, and by 2050, it could almost double. Obviously, there will be innovations in waste to energy, recycling coming on the way, but the amount of waste is basically like covering Japan, Spain, and New Zealand in 10 meters of waste a year. And that's a huge challenge. If you talk about climate change as being something that the world faces as a global problem, waste is a non-sexy topic, but it impacts people directly today. Again, one of them being water quality. So this is a fresh issue. It's a social issue. It's a community issue. At the same time, it's a very big opportunity for engagement and company activities that can put them in the forefront of leading in this space and, again, driving that circular economy. It's not discussed much at all, and this just came a few weeks ago, in fact, is the fact that we burn almost 40% of our waste, much in the developing world, and the toxicity value of that, and the addition to black carbon and particulates, which adds to the climate change issues, are something that is not really addressed either. So this isn't really our focus, but it's something that we should all keep aware of as we're seeing the problem, particularly plastics and the toxicity there. In terms of maybe lost opportunities or future opportunities, once we all kick into this space of better circular economy systems, the estimated by W is $340 billion to $600 billion. If you look at just the post-consumer packaging in the U.S. alone, only packaging, it's a roughly $11.4 billion going in the landfill, lost materials as resources, which could be used again. The recycling industry creates multiple times as many jobs as landfill or trash, typical trash and waste management business today. So there's huge opportunity for job creation, innovation, everything in terms of harnessing this material as the resource, again, beyond the initial price of the use of the product. In the EU, it's $57 billion if they fully implement the EU legislation, and the value saved just from separating the 5 high-volume plastics, $1 billion. So there's a lot of opportunities out there, and I would suspect some of these are also underestimated. U.S. alone, about 35% of the municipal solid waste gets recycled. The estimate for plastics is 9%. So there's 90% of an out there, which is petroleum-derived product, which means it's stored energy. The problem, obviously, is getting the economies of scale to get all of this material back into a system to make it And that's where reverse supply chains, bring-back programs can be used for consumer engagement and really looking at the value of this material coming back in. 80% of value of materials goes to waste in the U.S. That's $3.2 billion estimate, and percent is recovered. So again, a lot left on the table here. The Plastic Disclosure Project, as you might know, the Carbon Disclosure Project is very similar. It's similar to water reporting and carbon reporting. We're trying to companies to report their annual either waste, their waste and plastic use. And the reason plastic has been focused on is because most materials are pretty easily handled and recycled in many communities. Paper, metal, aluminum, and food, organics, all can be dealt with. Plastic is the most difficult to deal with because of so many different types. And mix those together, they can't all go in the same batch. And when you don't have the same batch, you don't get economies of scale. And then it becomes costly to sort, and you end up with a lot of material that doesn't go away at all. Every single piece of plastic ever made still exists today, unless somehow burned or incinerated, which might be causing other toxic problems in the air and eventually the water when it gets back into the water. So companies to measure their max use of the material, and so they can manage it better. And there's no real bad number, there's no wrong number, but the point is, not many companies do that management, and they don't know what their own metrics are. And without metrics and a baseline, you can't get to the next to understand where you might have efficiencies in action or use. Today that we're working with the UN and the World Bank on this, I think one of the interesting points is that this program can cut across all borders in all countries, and it doesn't need legislation, bans, or taxes to make it work. It's voluntary, and it really just needs stakeholder engagement, different groups like yourselves, working within the communities and the businesses that you go and work with. The same questions as you would of carbon and water, the same things for plastic. And if you do that, you're going to be able to decide feedstock streams are of these different materials, which can then drive circular economy option much better, because you'll know what you have. So there's many ways that a company or institution could make improvements. Institution, someone like an airport, a small municipality, a hospital, stadium, a university. They can increase recycled content in their products. That's a very good thing, because that pulls waste of plastics back into the system, that circular economy. In recycling programs, that doesn't mean putting a bunch of bins out with your name on it and being proud that you're helping the school to recycle. It's really more about engaging your consumer base and your user base, look at your materials and understand, or your products, how can I help get those back into the system, whether you use it again or a third party recycles it. Anything that can get that back into the system is good. Plastic in packaging, there's low-hanging fruit, particularly coming out of China. Everything's individually wrapped, sometimes mindfully. A lot can be improved right there. Developing designs that can be everything from standardization of materials so that it's easier to recycle at the end, designing for recycling so that you can pull it apart and use the pieces or the materials embedded in there in an easier way. Or even more reusability. It could be plastic, but it might be so that it's reusable many times instead of a single use. And materials, which can involve the biomaterial space, and we can talk about that if someone has questions. Would you go on from here? Talk that we did together?
Thank you, Doug. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Julia Renaud, Senior Research Analyst and author of the Valuing Plastic report at True Cost. And I'm very happy to be able to talk you through this piece of research on behalf of the whole team that contributed to it. So on the next slide, we're providing a bit of context on the aims of the research. So the overarching aim of the research was to build a business case for better understanding and managing the potential risks and opportunities related to plastic. So plastic waste and production have impacts on the environment, as Doug outlined, but plastics are obviously effective as well. As packaging, for example, they can reduce environmental impacts by protecting their contents and reducing waste. So in our analysis, we thought to find environmental hotspots rather than simply being a blunt tool for appraisal. So underpinning the aim were a number of objectives. So the first one, so we limited the scope to 16 consumer goods sector and to certain impacts, including greenhouse gas emissions, air pollution, land and water pollution, and impacts from waste, and mapped those impacts across the supply chain from production to the end of life of plastic products and plastic packaging. In this initial study, we focused on the impacts over the life cycle of the end tangible plastic product or packaging, but we did not value the plastic which is used in the supply chain. We did not consider as well the in-use performance of plastics, because this would have been very difficult to model at this scale with publicly available data. Using our supply chain model, we then estimated plastic use for 100 companies, which were the largest publicly listed companies in each of the selected 16 consumer goods sector globally. And we modeled their plastic impact by understanding both their business segments and product mix. We also studied their public disclosures on plastic use, and using this in our model data, estimated the plastic cycle environmental impacts. We then converted the physical impact, so by physical impact I mean cubic meter of water used or tons of greenhouse gases emitted, into natural capital values. So just to explain a bit more what we mean by natural capital valuation. We do this by understanding what is the impact of emitting 1 ton of greenhouse gas or abstracting 1 cubic meter of water, for example, on societal well-being. So some of the questions we ask ourselves is, what is the financial cost to human health of emitting 1 ton of sulfur dioxide or particulate matter, for example? Or what is the impact on local house prices of a ton of waste in a landfill site, or the damage done to marine ecosystems by waste at sea? So different valuation techniques were to put a dollar value on those physical impacts that express the damages that those created to society. The same technique, we also quantified the benefits of good plastic management practices, because after all, we're not saying that plastic use is bad, we're just saying that it needs to be measured and managed adequately. We also conducted 3 case studies, companies which have good plastic management practices, which Doug will present shortly afterwards. And we provided recommendations to companies about how they can take a holistic approach to plastic optimization from an environmental perspective. Slide. You can see an infographic answering the question, what does business care in the end? So several reasons, and for each risk, you can turn the coin and there would be an opportunity. So, for example, there are risks to their brand. An example being Coca-Cola, which came under huge pressure in Australia from a Greenpeace campaign for not supporting a deposit tax to stimulate container recycling, for example. Second, there are some cost implications from rising and volatile input costs, for example, oil. So 4% of global crude oil production goes into plastic oil feedstock, and over 4% is used as energy in the synthesis. There is also increasing regulation where companies are not being proactive. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the plastic bags bans, which are being passed in several countries and states. Finally, 90% of investors surveyed by the PDP are in support of better disclosure on plastic use. They include household names such as Credit Suisse, HSBC, BNP Paribas, Bank of America, and JP Morgan, who control more than $6 billion in assets. At the beginning, where there is risk, there's always opportunity as well. So companies can position themselves from a brand perspective, such as Lush Cosmetics, for example, who have been making their lack of plastics packaging a feature for years. Or another example would be Interface Flooring, which has successfully built its whole business with sustainability at its core and reduced costs by developing leading recycling technology. So on the next slide, you can see the headline results of our study. So overall, we found that the plastic consumption by the global consumer goods industry has a total natural capital impact of $75 billion per year. But in spite of this, less than half of the companies analyzed reported one or more figures on plastic use or management. We also find that the total cost to marine ecosystem was $13 billion, quite a substantial percentage of the overall natural capital cost. On the next slide, you can see that 75 billion figure spread across the 16 sectors we analyzed. So here the green bars shows how that 75 billion figure is distributed by sector, and the purple dots measured using the right-hand axis identifies the percentage of the sector revenue that would be at risk if the externalities of plastic use and disposal had to be internalized. So what does it mean? So on one hand, companies in the food, soft drink, and non-durable household goods sectors have the lowest natural capital cost in absolute terms. You can see that with the green bar. And thus they are more likely to face reputational and legislative risks from their association with the environmental impacts of plastic, especially litter from packaging. On the other hand, companies in the toy or athletic goods and footwear sector have the highest proportion of their revenue at risk, so this is the purple dots, and it means that economic, reputational, legislative, and other risks extract significant value from these businesses if they had to internalize the full cost of their plastic use. You can see the distribution of natural capital cost across different impacts, and this could be quite useful to identify which specific initiative may have the most beneficial impact. So this is an example for plastic packaging. So overall, the impacts from the manufacturing of plastic outweigh those at the end of life. These are driven by greenhouse gases and water pollution from oil extraction and plastic synthesis. And at the end of life, you can also see the natural capital cost related to plastic that reached the ocean is quite a large part of the total impact. Here we have to at our results. It should be noted that our estimates of the end-of-life natural capital costs are almost certainly conservative. And the reason is because the science quantifying the ecological impacts of plastic waste, for example, additives or microplastics, is it's in infancy. So higher upstream impacts that you see here may be due to a more incomplete knowledge on the end-of-life issues. So on the next slide, you can see the benefits of good plastic management. So when end-of-life plastics are well managed, the benefits can be quite significant. Overall, across the whole consumer goods industry, they found that existing natural capital savings for recycling or energy recovery would be $4 billion US per annum. So this is 5% of the total natural capital cost. And what you can see here on this slide is the actual savings achieved by the 100 companies that we analyzed. You can see that by leveraging these initiatives and closing the loop, many companies are joining the market for recycling by using recycled content. And following our review of the company disclosures across those 100 companies, we were able to estimate that the natural capital benefits from their activities totaled approximately $250 million US. And you can see that here it's mostly driven by the use of recycled content in food packaging and soft drinks packaging. So Doug, maybe do you want to talk through the roadmap?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Julie. Just going on this topic, I would also pretty conservative, and there's a lot of these companies that are not yet really kicking in the circular economy story and the recycling. So the potential benefits here in doing it, but the data have been easily publicly available. So I personally think these numbers are probably understated on the benefit side. What we're trying to do, with this and with the Plastic Disclosure Project is drive annual reporting, which is a baseline measurement, and then yearly measurement from there on how things have changed, and having management plan to look at the risks and strategies and the opportunities associated with that, and implement those, a lot of which will end up saving money, creating innovation, creating jobs, creating better environment for everyone around in that community. And as we can drive, especially with the different stakeholders involved, including the asset management industry, is increasingly looking at transparency and ESG reporting and social services. This is going to be a very increasingly hot topic. Some of you might have heard what some of the industry is doing in this space or not doing, but in the case of scrubs and even toothpaste, there's been a big focus recently on microplastics, because a lot of the which goes into these products is now plastic instead of natural apricot seeds or something like that. And there's no sewage system or water treatment system in the world that can capture these little microparticles of plastic. And there is proof that microparticles of plastic, whether it comes from a face scrub like this, when you wash your face and it goes down the drain, or from bigger pieces of plastic that just degraded over time. They don't biodegrade, but they just get smaller and smaller and smaller with soil degradation and the exposure to the environment. Get into small animals and small microorganisms and mussels and basically into our food chain, and can be carriers of other toxins at the same time. So that's something for us to worry about. But P&G and Unilever have both made good strides and said they will remove this from their products in the next couple of years. So, things are happening on that front. This before, but designing with the end in mind. It's very important to get economies of scale in recycling, and things are so low, and the costs, are basically economies of scale of in the case of plastic, the petroleum industry. It's very easy to make plastic at a cheap price, but it's very hard to recover it and turn that back into usable material, because the economies of scale are and it's difficult. So if we can design for recycling in our packaging, have standardized materials within the packages. That would make it incredibly more simple for the people who are trying to shred, clean, sort, and reuse this material for secondary life purposes. Design, some of you might know Method, and their great work, and EcoBear. They have done some pretty neat things with plastic literally on the beach in Hawaii, and they've turned that material into the packaging for their products. So they've shown literally that the plastic out at sea or on the land at least can be turned into a product. Now, economies of scale aren't there necessarily for them to do huge scale production of this. Great case study to show that it can be done, and the design can be nice and neat and interesting, and the story is a big one. So that is very interesting for consumer engagement. Unilever and Coke and the large companies are doing more to try to reduce both their packaging and also the recyclability of their packaging and the recycled content in their material. As you know, many of you probably know with Coke, they have blended their PET, petroleum-based bottles now with plant-based bottles, which is 30% plant-based content coming from sugar from Brazil, sugar cane industry. There's a carbon reduction there, but the plastic is recyclable within the same recycling chain. Not always the case when you blend bio material with petroleum, and that is for discussion and challenge for the industry when you get into sort of labeling and verification of what material is actually petroleum-based or plant bio-based. But anyway, it's something that is changing, and it's always improving. Deb has made some great strides and said by 2020 that at least 10% of all of their products will be with post-consumer recycled material, and they have a pledge to have packaging waste by 2020. So it's all closed loop and circular economy things, which is great. I talked about this before. This is from As You Sow, but it's the value of material that goes to landfills in the U.S. without getting recovered. As a conservative estimate, again, the plastic value of this chart is roughly $8 billion. Some of you might know of plastic bottles being one of the easiest to recycle. It's got a very strong secondary market globally, the PET material for bottles. But that recovery rate for recycling is still around 25-27%. So there's still a huge way to move recovering that material for reuse. You probably know Bill McDonough. I like this graph because it's, as you all strive for circular economy, I think this is very relevant because it when you're trying to reduce your carbon footprint or your pollution, usually goes downwards to the right, and that's a bad trajectory. People don't necessarily like the vision of that. And so, well, let's have a less bad trajectory. We try to get up to zero, decrease our badness. But at the same time, we want to increase our good trajectory, which is the benefits that we bring as a business and a service to our community and the public. We're making our products and as we're servicing the community. So this really kicks in when you start thinking about plastic and recovery, bring back programs, reverse supply chain, engagement to get that material back into the system. And I believe that many of the consumers out there will very much appreciate the leaders in the space who do that. Finish here as the economic stimulus. Job creation is very big when you look at recycling. Business tax revenues go up. You have innovation. You have new reuse of materials. The country of Taiwan, for example, has a very strong PR law now, extended producer responsibility, and they put a charge on anyone who uses plastic, and that goes back into the government system and pays for recovery, recycling, grinding, cleaning, reuse. They're very forward-thinking and innovative, have a huge recovery rate now for plastic, and it's not being incinerated, it's being back into use. So if you're looking at examples of countries that have done pretty neat things, particularly Asia, in the recent years, Taiwan's a good group to look for, and they endorse our plastic disclosure project because they see the writing on the wall in terms of the potential for plastic to really be reused and recovered in a way that we're just not doing it today. There's, we need stakeholders who are out there who this issue, but also can take this to their companies or the community and say, even to the men, what is the footprint, what is the waste footprint of our city, of our town, of our company, where is using this material, how much are we really getting back, could we increase the content of recycled material, and by many these macro numbers and the footprint, basically we can have much management of that material and participate in the circular economy. And to, again, a reminder that we're not saying plastic is bad as the way we use it. What is when it's not managed properly, when we're done using it. It does get into the environment, when it does cause a burden on infrastructure and management capacities of cities, then it's a problem, and that's what we're trying to help fix. So with that, we can go to questions if that's okay.
Thanks, Dirk. That was absolutely fantastic. So we've got around 10 or 13 minutes left for questions, and some really interesting ones coming through from the audience here. I think the reoccurring kind of that's come through is around the design phase and the design options for plastic. In particular, rather than at kind of plastic recycling, should we be looking at complete alternatives to plastic to avoid some of the downstream problems?
I mean, that's a great point, and yes, it should. I would argue that much of the world has been overwhelmed by discussion on climate change and how to reduce your carbon footprint. Therefore, people streamline their decisions in looking to lightweighting. And when you lightweight and you're shipping material around the world and you get an energy savings, then inevitably becomes the material to use. But at the same time, you're getting a kickback to localized farming, localized products, localized production. And as you start to do that, I think you will see a whiplash that goes back into using different reusable or more recyclable materials, which might be glass and the metals. But, it's tough to get away from this, so we're focusing on this, on the plastic that does get used. But clearly, when you create those or new ways to not it, that's a good way. Create another problem somewhere else.
sorry about that. I think I cut out there for a minute. You can hear me?
It's okay.
Yeah, about that. Yeah, thanks for that, Doug. So the other questions that have come through are around, how you can collaborate with partners to influence the design process in particular, and also the move away from plastics, perhaps, or looking at alternatives to plastics, or improving the infrastructure for the plastic recycling process.
A couple pieces there. One is really looking at designing for recycling and collaboration across the main types. So if you've got competitive companies, but they're all selling soap or they're all selling tube something, to the extent that they can all use the same material for their packaging is a very advantageous thing, because at least the recyclers at the end of the day will be able to blend and use all of those in the same type of batch instead of a lot of sorting. Plastic bottles, there's 3 types of materials on the bottles. I think CAN actually mandates that all of the material actually has to be the same material, PET. That includes the cap and the label. The problem in some countries is they really glue the labels onto the bottle, and it's incredible to get the labels off of the bottle. And so have this inability to off the different materials, it gets very hard. So if there's history collaboration on the way we use that material for the packaging for our products, and can really be easy for the people downstream who are going to grab it and try to grind it and reuse it, that's a big advantage. Would be biomaterials, because if someone wants to maybe get into the bio and biodegradable space, one of it is that material, even when it gets into the ocean, actually doesn't biodegrade. So we need the industrial infrastructure to handle the waste or the degradation process for material that's being used. Some biodegradable material is meant to be recycled, like this material, and others is meant to be in a processing system. And so knowing what you're planning to do in that case, and maybe collaborating again with others in the industry, is a big angle. And there would be regulation. Food packaging is quite outdated. The laws for recycled content in food packaging in many countries. Technologies now exist to make this possible in a safe way, but the technology regulations don't allow for it. So to the extent your companies could collaborate for lobbying for improvements on recycled content input into materials, that would make it better for everyone involved, both producing the product and also recycling it at the back end.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the infrastructure, you mentioned that there was a huge benefit in kind of recycled plastic as an input feedstock, but obviously, the benefits tappable by the industry is dependent on the infrastructure that is there, both to collect used plastic and then also to remanufacture it into other usable forms. Is that infrastructure at sufficient scale to be able to supply the demand, or to be able to lead demand and savings to people that want to buy recycled plastic?
That's a great question, and the answer is absolutely not at scale yet. That's why we have a problem. Now, whose fault is that, and whose responsibility? Probably a tri-party issue. It's policy and government, because they need to really play a role here, whether it's through regulation and in a good way to get the material back. It's the courts. who, as we just talked about with standardization and ability to recycle the material, but also bring back programs and reverse supply chain use to get the material back in to get that economy of scale. And then the consumers have to play the role as well. They need it to be relatively easy. So three was working there that all kind of need to be linked together, and which goes first, the supply or demand. That's a trend. Many countries do not have the recycle capacity now. That China recently put up the green fence about 18 months ago, which was aimed at electronic waste importation, but they said no more plastic, dirty plastic. And a very interesting way, and I think a good way for the rest of the world, even though people, it hurts in a sense that now we're getting backlogged with plastic waste in our own front yard when we used to just send it to China. So we didn't innovate, we didn't create jobs, we didn't create the plastic recycling processing plants that we all need based on our consumption. And China, I think, has done us all a favor because it's pressure to say, well, now you've got all the plastic on your front door, what do you make? And now economies of scale to get the investment going in to now start reprocessing and bringing, as you call it, the jobs back home, to use that in a home turf environment and then take that material and get it in your local users again. And I think one of the things that we all could probably collectively do, or maybe someone could help fund it, I think there's an ecology that consumers don't want recycled content in their products. That's a little bit outdated because the technologies today are so good that you would even never know if it was recycled content or not. And it's that some companies simply don't put more recycled content in because they fear of that just in having it, when I believe actually they would be very interested to have it if they knew it was a bigger program and leadership of that company. So maybe some opportunities there.
Maybe if you could give the audience an idea of some of the major players kind of in this sector. I was fortunate enough 3 or 4 weeks ago to visit the Novelis aluminium recycling plant that's just opened in Nachtersfeld in Germany, the biggest aluminium recycling facility in the world. And their problem is exactly analogous to what you've just described, Doug. They can't, or they are working towards being able to get enough feedstock to satisfy the output abilities of the plant, which involves them working with multiple stakeholders, local authorities, and national government to increase recycling rates for aluminium across the board. I assume the same is true in the plastic recycling sector. Perhaps you could give us an idea of some of the players that are important.
I would say we're not household names, and I don't claim to know all of them, but MICROPLASTICS is certainly one that has been leading in this space. The plant, ironically, because of exactly the problem you just mentioned, they operate now in California, which was their first plant, because they couldn't get the feedstock, because both systems, in fact, the local traders were undercutting them and selling it to China before they could even get their fingers on it, so we could keep the plant going. But now they have one. They've got one in China, one in the UK, and the UK one is doing 1 million pounds a day of mixed plastic, and their system is very high tech, very automated. It's something that can scale into every single country. It does optical sorting and basically allows you to sort 20 types of plastic to get pure feedstock streams out of a mixed lot, in a very appropriate, qualified way, which can then go into all kind of consumer electronics and again. That's the holy grail at the top end of the scale. and you've got on the way down, which will be people who focus on PET because it's fairly easy to handle. The problem, like aluminum, it's a one material, very, very easy to turn into recycling process. Plastic, again, 7 types, 7 grades of plastic, and even more than that, makes it really hard to colors to get that volume that you need to get people excited about reusing it. So we need, aggregators that might use reverse supply chains. This is companies can collaborate on their waste streams, because if you collaborate on your waste stream, you might not have enough by yourself, but your neighbors or in the same industry may have enough, so that when you put them all together, the recycler down the road or in the next county has the volume to be able to do what he needs to do with his technology. It's tricky, but that's where we need to go.
Thanks so much, Doug, and thanks, Julie. I'm just going to pass over now to Peter Lacey, the co-chair of the Circular Economy Task Force, to pose any final questions and wrap up this. Peter. Are you there? Sorry, Peter, are you there? I've just taken you off mute. Apologies.
Me?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, a minute over, so I'm not going to add any questions, but just to say massive thanks to both speakers. It was a fantastic session. Like others, we still have plenty of questions left. If you do have them, please channel them through Quentin if they weren't asked, and we'll channel to the speakers. And just to say a big thank you to both of you. This has been another fantastically interesting session, and keep up the good work. Apart from that, do stay tuned to the Circular Economy Speaker Series, and there'll be more coming in the next few weeks.
Thanks very much, Peter. And with that, I'll close the session. And just to try the next session on the 5th of November with Nate Morris. So look out for the invitation for that, which will be coming out in the next few days. Thanks, and have a good afternoon and rest of the day. Thanks, Julie. Bye-bye.